In writer-director Curry Barker's Obsession, Baron Bailey has a crush on his friend Nikki Freeman. Does she feel the same way? Baron, bare to his friends, has no idea because he's too scared to say anything. Huh, I thought protagonists were supposed to be relatable. All that changes after he buys her a gift from a new age shop, something called a One Wish Willow. It's just a collectible, a novelty, but it claims if you make a wish, break the stick, then that wish comes true. After another painfully awkward conversation where Bear's lips remain sealed, even when Nikki outright asks if he likes her, he breaks the stick and makes the wish.
I wish Nikki Freeman loved me more than anyone in the entire world.
Bear's miscalculation? He didn't know he's in a horror movie. Yes, the wish comes true, to the letter. Nikki is obsessed with Bear after that. It's unsettling at first how much she isn't acting herself, but soon he settles into and even embraces their budding romance. What goes wrong? A lot. Let's talk spoilers. Aside from the obvious moral transgression that Bear has, albeit unknowingly at first, obliterated her autonomy, her love goes so far it can be scary. Like how Bear wakes up to a bizarre memorial display for his recently deceased cat, a display that includes the cat itself, decaying corpse, flies and all. Or the way Bear will wake up in the middle of the night to find her staring at him in the dark, wearing his sweater. She just loves the smell. She loves to watch him sleep. And she's worried. Does he not love her as much as she loves him? She worries it isn't mutual. She becomes entirely dependent on Bear. She duct tapes the front door shut to try and stop him leaving for work in the morning. When he leaves anyway, she doesn't move from the spot he left her in, and he comes home to a mess on the floor because she went to the bathroom where she stood. I won't say what kind. It was both. She makes him a cat sandwich for lunch. Oh, wait a minute. What kind of sandwich? It doesn't take long for the relationship to feel more like a burden than a wish come true. He can't go anywhere or do anything without Nikki. The slightest hint that he wants any time alone is met with violent screams, sobs, or her slamming on the door. He tries calling the support number on the One Wish Willow, but they don't do wish alterations or cancellations. Nikki will be like this until the wish ends, which only happens once Bear is dead. Though the customer service rep asks if he'd like to talk to Nikki, and he hears her anguished screams. That gets us into ending explained territory. By the end of the movie, we understand the truth that's hinted at in this scene. Nikki's body is effectively possessed. Hard to say by what exactly, but some kind of entity conjured or created by Bear's wish. That entity has taken control of her body and uses it to become a twisted version of Nikki that embodies the wish. She loves him more than anyone in the entire world. What about the real Nikki? She's still alive, buried somewhere beneath the entity that's taken control. We hear her on the phone. Apparently the experience is torturous. Later we hear from her again. Nikki appears asleep, but she's able to speak quietly. And we realize it's the real Nikki breaking through for a moment while the entity slumbers. She tells Bear this: "Kill me, please. She's sleeping. It's me. Please don't wake her up. Just kill me." In the moment where I felt the vibe shift in my theater, where anyone who was on the fence about Bear, is he an okay guy who made a terrible mistake or straight up evil? This is the part where I felt a shift toward the latter as my whole theater went, ooh. In reply to Nikki begging him to kill her, Bear says this: "What would be so bad? What is so bad about being with me?" She tells him, "I've never been with you, Bear. Just kill me, please." She sobs, "Please," a few more times after that. We actually get a hint at the mechanics of the possession the moment it happens. Right after Bear makes his wish, she tries to coax him inside, using the grief over his cat as an excuse. "Maybe you want to come inside," she says. "I mean, I did just lose my cat, Bear." When he's confused, she corrects herself. "Wait, I'm sorry. I mean, you lost your cat." If an entity has just moved into her body, it might be confused and still getting its bearings. It knows something happened with someone's cat, but it hasn't fully absorbed the memory. When Bear gets confused, it's like the entity has to go through her filing cabinet of memories to correct itself. Their bizarre relationship does not go unnoticed by Bear's other friends. The word going around is that Nikki is having some kind of mental breakdown, and he's taking advantage. When he brings her to a party at Ian's place, and it ends with her screaming and stabbing herself in the face with a broken bottle, for some reason it doesn't change anyone's mind. Things escalate when Bear's friend Sarah, who happens to have a crush on him, asks to meet in the middle of the night. She's concerned about him and Nikki. "Oh, hi, Nikki. What are you doing here? Oh my God!" She breaks open the car window, holds a brick, and smashes Sarah's face into it over and over, caving in her skull. Bear helps move the body, then Nikki tells him to go home. She'll take it from here. Finally, Bear storms back into the New Age shop where the store clerk tells him his only hope. You only get one wish, but you could always get someone else to make a wish that counteracts yours. Or you could kill yourself. Bear buys another one-wish willow and brings it to Ian. He tells him to wish that Bear never made his wish to begin with. Ian obviously doesn't believe any of it, so he just screws around, breaks a stick, and wishes for $1 billion. And $1 billion rain from the ceiling, while Bear stares at his friend with the angriest eyes I've ever seen. One last idea. He has another one-wish willow. This time, he tries giving it to Nikki to have her undo the wish. She'd do anything for him, right? Things are awkward at home. Nikki has Sarah's faceless corpse nude on a chair. Nikki is wearing Sarah's clothes and has replicated her tattoos on herself. And when Ian shows up to celebrate his $1 billion bounty, she shoots him in the head. Time to end this. Bear heads to the bathroom and takes enough painkillers to die. Except while he's in there, Nikki uses that one-wish willow. We don't hear her wish, but from Bear's changed expression, the way he leaves the room and embraces her, it was probably something along the lines of, "I wish Bear loved me as much as I love him." Except those painkillers. He dies in her arms. She goes to shoot herself in the head, but just in the nick of time. Bear's wish expires now that he's dead. The real Nikki snaps out of it. She's back. Except all her friends are dead, and to the cops it'll look like she did it because she did, except she was possessed by a wish demon. Is there any hope of a happy ending? Well, it could have been even worse, though I guess it's arguable what's worse. Barker told Entertainment Weekly, "I was really obsessed with this Romeo and Juliet ending, actually. In fact, he filmed a version where Nikki does shoot herself. At first, I assumed he meant that she shoots herself before Bear's wish gets canceled out by his death. But Barker clarifies, and it sounds like it would have been the real Nikki responsible for pulling the trigger, due to the experience of being trapped in a sort of limbo while her body was puppeted. He says, "I think she's experienced awful, awful things in there. I think she's pretty traumatized by what she saw, and she's traumatized by not having control of her body. That's kind of why the Romeo and Juliet ending works for me, because she was taking control for the first time in a while." But Barker's father convinced him it's more terrifying for her to live with the trauma. In his Inverse interview, Katie Rife asked if perhaps there's some hope. Could Nikki find that $1 billion, then use it to run away and start over? I'd add to that, maybe hire someone to grab a one-wish willow and undo all this. Barker supposes it's possible, but unlikely. It's a bleak ending, and I'd say appropriately so. Barker told Time magazine, "Love should be earned. Anything that's not that probably isn't going to work out." As a cautionary tale of stolen love, the movie ensures it's a horrific experience. For Nikki, it's hell. For Bear, despite some initial joy, it quickly turns into hell and ends with him taking his own life. To me, what makes the movie especially terrifying is its dedication to some form of reality. First, in its characters. Barker told the playlist, "I wanted to approach it like, what if this happened in real life? What if we took magic and put it in a world where magic doesn't exist? Would you tell your friend right away? Your first thought wouldn't be that it's magic. Your first thought would be that she probably took a drug, or now she's telling me that her dad is dying. Maybe I should cut her some slack." Going through the process of emotions, that's really fun for me. You can sense the thought and dedication that went into crafting real-world characters. And it all starts before the nightmare, when we're just getting to know Bear, Nikki, Ian, and Sarah. You so quickly get a feel for the dynamic between them, Bear's crush, and why he'd have that crush. It's effective in building a framework, so when the horrors begin, they do feel like they're happening in a fully realized social environment. The moment Nikki was replaced by the twisted wish version of herself, I immediately felt myself grieving for the real Nikki. She was given so much personality. She was given hints at hopes and dreams. She just gave her 2 weeks' notice, so she's clearly forging some new path for herself. You get enough of a feel for her as a person that when the switch flips, there is such a sense of loss. Bear is the one we follow throughout the movie, but of course Nikki is the deeper victim, in at least the way I felt while watching, given how much of her plight is only hinted at and left to the imagination. While Bear's horror comes in the form of moment-to-moment scares and a growing dread as the walls close in, Nikki's horror is a despairing, existential dread. Her screams on that phone call with the One Wish Willow rep were terrifying. It made me wonder, maybe this is even worse than being stuck as a passenger in her own body. Maybe while the entity takes the wheel, she's in some form of hell or purgatory, where the only thing that makes sense is to scream endlessly. Spending time with Bear's other friends, Ian and Sarah, also helps to set up the coming horror, because that way, once love-struck Nikki isolates him from everyone else, you can feel that isolation. You can feel Ian and Sarah's missing presence as shorthand for those unhealthy relationships where everyone else is excised from your life. And when the horrors do begin, they're especially impactful because they all come from a real place. Unlike a ghost or demon, possessed Nikki's strange behavior is often an exaggerated form of something that would or could happen in the real world. It reminded me of interacting with a really drunk person or someone heavily under the influence of some other drug, when they're just barely responding to you, but otherwise acting strangely and you just can't get through to them. It can be unnerving, like they just aren't the person you were talking to a couple of hours ago. That's the sense I often got from Indy Navarrette's performance, especially when the switch first flips, and Bear just can't figure out why she's suddenly inviting him in. Many times in the movie, he's asking some form of, "Nikki, what is going on? Why are you acting like this?" When she sort of glitches out, what I attribute to the real Nikki trying to break through and things just going wrong, when she screams suddenly, walks backwards, or just moves in odd ways, it's like the ultimate form of that uncanniness. Those sudden movements often gave me chills in a way no horror movie has accomplished in a while. By connecting the horror to something real and physical, Barker tapped into something uniquely terrifying and primal. In fact, Barker's direction to her was not to play it like a demon or anything like that. Quote, "It was so specific what I wanted to do, mostly just not playing the demon, but more playing a crazy, clingy girlfriend." According to Indy, one of the modern references they used was the movie Pearl. She told Who, What, Where, "We watched Mia Goth's performance in Pearl because we really wanted her performance to be utterly grounded and humane, but also heightened. I never wanted the audience to suspend disbelief for this idea. I wanted the audience to be so locked in and so emotionally attached to Nikki because Nikki is the ugliest aspects of being in a relationship." Then, of course, the violence. By the time Nikki is killing people, they aren't generic slasher victims. They're characters we've connected with. Especially Sarah, who throughout the movie is trying to get into art school and keeps getting rejection letters. When she met up with Bear, she wanted to open her final letter together. Only after she's dead does Bear open the blood-soaked envelope and find that finally, this was an acceptance letter. It makes her death all the more sad, and the desecration of her corpse all the more disturbing. The movie was also paced to perfection, not just in the rollout of chills and thrills, but with some deeper realizations and transformations. First, Nikki's plight. Although it's disturbing from the moment it begins, her stolen autonomy, the movie slowly shows just how terrifying it is. the phone call with her screams, her begging Bear to kill her. And on Bear's side, at first he can't be blamed for making that wish. It was obviously done out of a moment of frustration with himself, and he couldn't have possibly thought the novelty toy was actually magical. But slowly, as he becomes more aware of the reality that the magic is real, we judge him more harshly. Barker pinpoints it, telling Time, the moment you're supposed to realize Bear 100% knows what's going on is at the restaurant when he asks her point blank, "You love me more than anyone in the world?" which was the exact wording of his wish. Then when Nikki says, "Why does it matter?" he says, "It doesn't matter to me," and it's confirmed. It goes even further after the phone call and after Nikki begs for him to kill her. Now, not only does he understand magic made her quote-unquote love him, but that it's not even the real Nikki. In fact, for the real Nikki, the experience has been torture. I've seen some discourse online about whether or not Bear is the villain, though I haven't actually seen anyone say he isn't a villain, but I have seen people add some nuance, which I agree with. In my view, part of what makes the movie so compelling is how messy it gets. At the start, I'd say Bear is at worst a coward, or put more sympathetically, somebody ruled by fear and anxiety. Once the wish takes hold, Bear is at first unaware of it. Who would believe in that sort of magic? But Nikki is clearly not herself, so is he taking advantage of her? At the same time, we see how persistent the wish entity is. And if that entity is a being capable of suffering, then Bear not giving in to her is likely torture for it. In a way, by spawning this new being, albeit unintentionally, Bear may have an ethical responsibility to take care of it. The real Nikki is suffering, should this new entity suffer as well? Once Bear knows the magic is real, every second he spends not trying to figure it out is a moral failure. He took too long to inspect the willow and find the phone number. And even once he did, at first he just tried to alter the wish, make it work better for him, rather than try to cancel it outright. He took too long to revisit the store in search of answers. Perhaps if he'd gone sooner, the suggestion of canceling out the wish with somebody else's wish would have come sooner. And with a clearer head, maybe he could have made that happen. Of course, when she begs him to kill her, and he has that selfish reply, that is clearly an act of evil. Does he claw back any redemption at the end? Honestly, he's so disheveled and messed up, how much is he thinking clearly, versus how much does he just viscerally need an escape from the mess? Almost as though freeing Nikki is superfluous to him at that point. He just needs out. Maybe if he'd left a confession first, something that would actually convince the cops he's responsible for all this, at least give her a fighting chance in court. That might have moved the needle slightly. But this messiness, Bear sometimes does horrible things. Sometimes he is a victim of an awful situation he inadvertently created. All that is part of what makes the movie so unique and effective. The TLDR, Bear is the villain, with the nuance that you can discuss exactly at what point he deserves that label. You can discuss, did the bizarre scenario change him at all so he became more of a villain, or was he always a horrible person, and this scenario simply revealed it. And of course, it could be a mix of the two. Having said all that, the movie's pretty funny too. No surprise given Barker's background in comedy. He's known for his sketch comedy YouTube channel, That's a Bad Idea. At the start, Obsession has that awkward humor of Michael Johnston's spot-on performance as Bear, the quintessential nice guy who is so painfully unable to state his feelings. There were audible groans and laughs from my audience at all the right places. Smashing that meek character against love-struck Wish Nikki, making things very awkward, was often funny in that uncomfortable way before turning into something entirely terrifying. And I could not get over the dry, frank treatment of magic. When Bear first buys the One Wish Willow, and the clerk says people often complain about it, he wonders why. Is it because they don't work, or is it because the wishes do work, but it ruins their lives? And the clerk replies, or they die or wish they were dead, followed by awkward silence. Or when he calls the helpline and asks about altering the wish, the guy says, they don't really do that. Would you like to file a cancellation request? Yes. Oh, well, we don't really do that. Then why did you make it sound like I could? Hilarious, and then the turn when he asks if he'd like to speak to Nikki. Chilling. The frank treatment of magic isn't just funny, but also connects back to something I mentioned earlier, the movie's sense of reality. Horror can often go off the rails, where it feels like anything can happen for the sake of a scare. This movie instead commits itself to some form of logic, as ridiculous as it may be. The one-wish willows just work. When Ian wishes for $1 billion, it doesn't monkey's paw its way there, it just gives him $1 billion. Of course, if you extend it out and imagine it's this easy to make wishes, the logic of the world starts to fail. Barker pointed this out himself to Total Film. If the one-wish willow actually works, which it does in this lore, and people are just making wishes left and right, there would be some crazy, like dragons would exist, and none of that. The world is pretty normal from what we see in this movie, so it doesn't really make sense. Here's my take. Every time someone makes a wish, they enter into an alternate reality where their wish comes true, so you're not experiencing everybody's wish at the same time, and that's what... But that doesn't make sense because the money falls from the ceiling. Yeah, it's broken. Given that the wishes do work, the horrifying part is that undoing Bear's wish probably would have worked, and Ian traded that opportunity away for money. Barker told Time, "Everyone thinks the one-wish willow is cursed, but it's not. Like if you worded it very, very carefully and wished for something you knew couldn't possibly be bad for anybody, you're probably fine. But if you're forcing someone to feel a certain way about you, it doesn't really matter how you word it." Making it so the thing isn't cursed, but instead it's Bear's wish that's the problem, that also keeps the movie more thematically focused. It isn't be careful what you wish for because that wish may be twisted by the cursed object. It's be careful what you wish for because your wish might already be fundamentally evil. Actually, the conception of the movie had nothing to do with wishes. First, Barker had the idea of obsession and how crazy it could get for one person to be obsessed with another. He just needed a mechanism to explain that obsession, and he found it while watching an old episode of The Simpsons. Season 3's Treehouse of Horror episode, where Homer buys a monkey's paw and every wish backfires. Overall, this was an incredible movie. I can't wait to see what Barker does next. He's floated the idea of anthologizing obsession, so a sequel with new characters focused on a new wish, or even an anthology series where each episode has a new wish. Whatever he chooses, I will for sure be there to watch and then to explain it.